I'm Dr. Christy, and this is Climbing Fish Parenting, practical parenting strategies in 20 minutes or less. I'm a psychologist and behavior analyst, and I work with exhausted, overwhelmed parents who feel like they've tried everything and nothing works. If you're listening to this while folding the laundry, hiding in your car, or wishing bedtime would just end already, you're in the right place. Today, we're talking about something almost no one says out loud: resentment. The kind that sneaks in at 8:47 p.m., the kind that makes you immediately feel ashamed, the kind that makes you think, what kind of parent even thinks this? By the end of this episode, you're going to understand why resentment shows up so often when you're parenting a child who's wired differently, what it actually means about you, and what it doesn't, and how to respond to it without drowning in guilt. Ready to transform your parenting journey? Let's dive in. It's 8:47 p.m., and you've been awake since 5:30 this morning. The day started with a 45-minute battle to get your kid out the door for school, meltdown over the wrong socks, refused to eat breakfast, couldn't find their backpack, even though it was exactly where it always is. You got to work late again, and your boss didn't say anything, but you saw the look. After work, you managed the homework battle. 2 hours for 20 minutes of work. Your kid crying, you trying every strategy you know. Timers, breaks, rewards, consequences. Nothing worked. Dinner was a negotiation because your child who doesn't fit the mold refused everything you made, while your other child, the one who just quietly does what they're supposed to, ate without complaint and went to finish their homework alone. Then there was the bedtime routine. Brush teeth, get pajamas on, one more story, one more hug, I need water, I'm scared, I can't sleep. It's now 8:47 p.m. Your partner is scrolling on their phone, the kitchen is still a mess, and you haven't sat down once, and you feel it. That tight, sharp, burning thought in your chest. This is not fair. Immediately followed by the gut punch of guilt. I shouldn't feel that way. What kind of parent resents their own child? What's wrong with me? And now you're sitting there with your heart racing, your jaw clenched, tears threatening, feeling like the worst parent in the world. Let that land for a second, because if you've been there, if you've felt that exact feeling and then immediately hated yourself for it, I need you to hear something. You're not a bad parent. You're not broken. You're not failing. You're human. And resentment doesn't mean what you think it means. Here's what no one tells you about parenting a child whose brain works differently than most. It is harder. Not because your child is bad or difficult or doing it on purpose, but because the invisible labor is enormous. Let me break down what you're actually carrying on a daily basis. There's the cognitive load. You're anticipating every transition before it happens, planning around sensory triggers, remembering which foods are safe, which textures are tolerable, which routines can't be disrupted. You're tracking medication schedules, therapy appointments, IEP meetings. You're mentally rehearsing how to explain your child to teachers, coaches, family members who don't get it. There's the emotional labor. You're regulating your own nervous system while your child is dysregulated, managing other people's judgment, real or perceived, absorbing your child's big emotions without losing it yourself, staying calm when you're touched out, burnt out, maxed out. And then there's the physical labor, the actual tasks of getting them dressed, packing their backpack, prompting every single step of every single routine. There's the co-regulating, sitting with them during homework, staying nearby during bedtime, being the external structure their brain doesn't provide. And then there's the advocacy labor, fighting for accommodations at school, explaining to family members why just be firmer doesn't work, justifying your parenting decisions to people who think you're too soft. All of this every single day, while also managing work, relationships, your other kids, your own needs. What needs? And trying not to completely fall apart. And when you're carrying that much with very little support, resentment isn't a character flaw. It's your nervous system waving a red flag. It's your body saying, I cannot keep doing this alone. That's not weakness. That's information. Here's what I want to talk about for a minute, because I think this is part of why resentment feels so shocking when it shows up. Nobody warns you about this part. Nobody tells you that parenting a child who's wired differently is going to look nothing like what you imagined. Before you had kids, you probably had a picture in your mind of what it would be like. Maybe you imagined those Pinterest perfect moments, cozy Saturday mornings where everyone sits around the breakfast table, sweet afternoons at the park where kids play happily while you chat with other moms, family outings to the zoo or museum that feel fun instead of stressful. Maybe you saw yourself as the kind of parent who has a calm, organized home, who makes homemade lunches with little notes tucked inside, who plans creative activities and doesn't feel like they're constantly drowning. Maybe you imagined bedtime taking 20 minutes, one story, a gentle kiss on their forehead, and walking out of the room while they drift peacefully to sleep. Not the 2 hours it actually takes, with multiple requests for water and trips to the bathroom and meltdowns over pajamas. Maybe you thought the hardest part would be choosing between soccer and swim lessons, or deciding on screen time limits, not researching therapists and fighting for IEP accommodations, and explaining to family members why your parenting looks different. And then reality hit. And the gap between what you expected and what you're living is enormous. Here's what nobody tells you when you're pregnant or adopting or dreaming about having kids. They don't tell you that you'll spend 2 hours every single night just trying to get your kid to sleep. They don't tell you that you'll become an expert in sensory processing and executive function and IEP law just to survive. They don't tell you that you'll spend more time researching therapists and interventions than you ever spent planning your wedding. They don't tell you that other parents will look at you like you're doing something wrong when your child melts down in public. They don't tell you that family gatherings will become a source of stress instead of joy because you're constantly managing other people's judgments while trying to keep your child regulated. And they definitely don't tell you that you'll feel resentful about it because resentment isn't part of the parenting narrative we're sold. The narrative is, you'll be tired, sure. You'll be stretched thin, of course. But you'll also feel fulfilled and grateful and like this is the most meaningful work you'll ever do. And here's the thing, all of that can be true. You can feel fulfilled and grateful and like this is meaningful, but you can also feel resentful. And when the resentment shows up, it feels like a betrayal of that narrative. It feels like proof that you're failing at something everyone else seems to be able to do. But here's what I need you to understand. The reason no one warned you about this is because most people don't talk about it. Not because it's not happening to them, but because admitting it feels too vulnerable, too shameful, too much like saying, I'm not cut out for this. So it stays hidden. Parents suffer in silence, convinced they're the only ones who feel this way. And the isolation makes the resentment worse because now you're not just carrying the load, you're carrying it alone. And you think you're the only one who's struggling with it. Let me tell you something. You're not the only one, not even close. In my 15 years of working with families, I have never, not once, worked with a parent of a child who's wired differently who hasn't felt some version of this. Not one. The parents that look like they have it all together, they feel it too. The parents who seem endlessly patient, they feel it too. The parents you admire and think, wish I could be more like them, they feel it too. The difference isn't that they don't feel resentment. The difference is that they've learned how to acknowledge it without letting it define them. They've learned how to use it as information instead of drowning in shame about it. And that is what I want for you. Because here's the truth, the gap between what you expected and what you're living isn't a failure. It's just reality. And resentment isn't proof that you're not grateful for your child or that you don't love them enough. It's proof that you're human and you're carrying more than any one person should carry alone. You didn't sign up for this specific version of parenting, and it's okay to grieve that. It's okay to feel angry that this is harder than you thought it would be. It's okay to resent the fact that your life looks nothing like your friend's life, even though you both have kids the same age. None of that makes you a bad parent. It makes you honest. Let me explain why resentment feels so shameful. Here's where it gets complicated. We're taught that good parents love unconditionally, that if we're doing it right, we should feel joy, patience, gratitude. And when we don't, when we feel angry, exhausted, resentful, we think it means we're failing. But here's what I need you to understand: love and resentment can exist at the same time. You can deeply, fiercely love your child and feel resentful about what parenting them costs you. Those two things are not in conflict. Resentment doesn't erase love, and love doesn't mean you never feel the weight of this. Let me say that again. You can love your child with your whole heart and still feel resentful that your life looks nothing like what you thought it would. That's not failure, that's grief. And grief is a completely normal response to the gap between expectation and reality. Here's what happens for most parents: you feel resentful, then you feel ashamed for feeling resentful, so you overcompensate. You try harder, you give more, you push yourself further. You think, if I just do more, if I'm just better, if I just figure out the right strategy, this will get easier. But it doesn't get easier because the problem isn't your effort. The problem is that you're overextending without adequate support. And now you're exhausted and resentful and guilty. It's a cycle, and the guilt keeps you stuck in it because when you're busy blaming yourself for feeling resentful, you're not addressing what actually is causing it. When resentment shows up, it's usually pointing to one of three things. First, you are overextending beyond your capacity. You're doing too much for too long with too little support, and your body is saying, this is not sustainable. Second, you feel alone. Maybe your partner isn't carrying their share. Maybe family doesn't get it. Maybe friends have stopped inviting you places because your kids' needs make everything complicated. You're isolated, and isolation breeds resentment. Third, something important to you is being neglected. Maybe it's your marriage. Maybe it's time with your other kid. Maybe it's your career. Maybe it's rest. Maybe it's your identity outside of crisis manager. Resentment is pointing to the thing you're quietly grieving, and you need to listen to it, not judge it, not suppress it, but listen to it. Let me be very clear about what resentment is not. Resentment is not wishing your child were different. It's not failing to love your child. It's not being a bad parent. It's not proof you're failing. Resentment is evidence that you're carrying a lot. It's a signal that something needs to change. It's proof you're human. It's information about what you need. If you feel resentful, it doesn't mean you don't love your child. It means you're exhausted. There's a difference. I want you to notice what resentment actually feels like in your body, because when you can name the physical experience, you can catch it earlier before it builds into rage or shutdown. Resentment usually shows up as tightness in your chest, that feeling of heat rising or pressure, like something heavy is sitting on you. Your throat might feel constricted, like you're holding back words you can't say, or like you want to scream, but you're swallowing it down instead. Your jaw gets tight, clenching, grinding your teeth at night without even realizing it. Your stomach knots up, or you feel nauseous, or there's that sinking, heavy feeling that sits there all day. And your shoulders are up by your ears, rigid, like you're physically carrying weight. When you notice these sensations, and I mean really notice them, not just push through them, pause. That's resentment building, and it's telling you something needs to shift, not in your child, but in your load, in your support, in your expectations of yourself. Here's what not to do. Don't suppress it because it doesn't go away. It just goes underground and comes out sideways. Don't judge yourself for it because shame makes resentment worse, not better. Don't take it out on your child because they didn't cause this. The situation did. Here's what to do. First, name it out loud to yourself, to a safe person. I feel resentful right now. Just naming it takes some of the power out of it. Second, get curious, not critical. Ask yourself, where am I overfunctioning? What support am I not asking for? What expectation am I silently carrying that no one asked me to carry? What do I need that I haven't admitted, even to myself? Third, identify one small thing you can shift. You don't have to fix everything this week, But you do need to stop pretending you can do this exact thing forever. Maybe it's asking your partner to handle bedtime twice a week. Maybe it's hiring help, even if it's just someone to clean every other week. Maybe it's saying no to one obligation. Maybe it's taking 15 minutes for yourself before you start the evening routine. One small shift, not to fix the resentment, but to acknowledge I am allowed to have limits. Fourth, stop shaming yourself. Every time you catch yourself thinking, I shouldn't feel this, replace it with I feel this because I'm carrying a lot. That makes sense. You don't need to fix it perfectly. You need to stop punishing yourself for being human. I worked with a mom who came to me completely burnt out. She had 2 kids, one neurotypical, one with ADHD and anxiety. She said, I love them both, but I resent the one who's wired differently, and I hate myself for it. We started tracking what was actually happening. Every morning, 90 minutes getting the ADHD kid ready for school while her other kid got ready alone. 15 minutes. Every afternoon, 2 to 3 hours managing homework meltdowns while her other kid finished homework in 30 minutes without help. Every evening, bedtime took 2 hours for one child while the other went to bed without protest. Her husband worked late most nights. She had no family nearby. She hadn't had a full night's sleep in 3 years, and she was blaming herself for feeling resentful. I told her, you're not resentful because you're a bad mom. You're resentful because you're doing the work of 3 people and no one is helping you. We made one change. Her husband started handling bedtime for the ADHD kid 3 nights a week. That's it. 3 nights a week. She got 2 hours back. And the resentment, it didn't disappear, but it softened because she wasn't carrying it all alone anymore. Resentment is not proof you're failing. It's proof you're carrying a lot, more than you should be carrying alone. And when you allow yourself to acknowledge it without judgment, without shame, you create room for change instead of burnout. You're not broken. You're not selfish. You're not a bad parent. You're tired, and you're allowed to be. This week, I want you to try something small. First, notice when resentment shows up. Don't judge it, just notice it. Notice where you feel it in your body. Notice what triggered it. Second, get curious. Ask yourself, what is this resentment trying to tell me? Am I overextending? Am I undersupported? Am I neglecting something that matters to me? Third, identify one small thing you can shift. Not everything, just one thing. Maybe it's asking for help. Maybe it's saying no to something. Maybe it's giving yourself permission to rest without guilt. One thing, and see what shifts. All right, that's it for today. Remember, resentment is information. It usually means you're overextending, undersupported, or quietly grieving something you expected parenting to look like. You don't need to feel guilty for feeling human. You need space to acknowledge it and permission to ask for what you need. If this episode resonated, hit subscribe so next week's episode shows up automatically. And if you want more support like this, strategies and scripts that actually help, instead of generic advice that makes you feel worse, head to www.climbingfishparenting.com and sign up for my newsletter. That strategy I just gave you, it's the whole climbing fish philosophy in action. There's a quote, everybody's a genius. But if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing it's stupid. Your kid isn't broken. Your parenting isn't broken. Sometimes we're just asking our fish to climb trees. That's what we fix here. I'm Dr. Christy, and I'll see you next week.